Hey everyone, this is Jack from the Cardboard Herald, and recently I turned to Twitter to get your hot takes, your best of in a category, this time the best box art in board gaming, period, so we could make some content out of it and have a little bit of a debate. So let's take a look at what you threw at me. Regular Dave says, probably Root. Well, yeah, turns out a lot of you really like Kyle Farron's artwork, and I completely agree. I mean, this one I am biased towards because I love that whole red wall force critters with swords shtick, and also I really like Kyle Farron's artwork. So I don't have much to debate here, other than, honestly, I think at this point Leader Games has put out much more visually stunning box art, even if the illustrations in Root are among my all-time favorites. Kyle from Give Paws Hobby, which you should go ahead and check out that channel too, he too fanboys over some Leader Games and Cole Worley related artwork here, but he nominates the illustrations on the cover of Namiji. Namiji? I don't know. Someone let me know how to pronounce that correctly. It's pretty stunning. The minimalism is definitely great, and of course it's in the Tokaido family, so it is using that same sort of illustration to kind of be the front and center focal point that is inviting you in. I think I've seen this done effectively better elsewhere, and I like the original Tokaido illustration over Namiji, but I do like the enormous koi fish kind of lingering underneath the bridge laden castles. It is evocative of a world, but it also doesn't really give me any sort of vibes for the game itself. Mike Siggins has Tal Der Konaigi. Again, I really got to figure out how to pronounce things. I'm only one man. I'm trying my best here, but hard disagree. Mike says mainly because of the box, and yeah, maybe the box is doing something for you. And I am one to like non-conventional boxes. I like the tin boxes on the Forbidden games. I like the cube that the original Quarriors came in. But this thing is just an organizational nightmare. So the box I don't like and don't want to have to deal with. And the illustration on the front makes me think this is more of like a edutainment CD-ROM for Windows 95 than it does a board game that I would want to play with my friends. Dan Thurrott, the Space Biff himself, nominates Kalishka, which has this whole steal this album and steal this book sort of aesthetic to it, which are iconic covers, and he points out that it really sets a scene so you kind of get a vibe for the game without even knowing what it's about. And I do like that. The lighting on it especially is really incredibly done to give it this dimensionality, this texture on the front that is deceptive and makes you feel like you're opening a crinkled package that has suffered through various countries' mail systems. So I do really like it as an execution on this style, though I do find that this style is really hit or miss with me, where it tries to evoke that there are other dimensions to the box. There are things on top of the box, around the box, that the box is made out of materials that it actually isn't. So it's clever, but also a bit gimmicky. This is one of the better executions of that, though. Joe Livingston posts a really reflective and washed out picture of Kingdom Death, and I think this illustration, this photograph, really does the justice to why I don't like the Kingdom Death box. It is very pretty until you notice just how you can't really notice much about it, period. So it's more mysterious than substantive. It is cool, and it's going for a thing, but I don't think that thing always works, especially if you're trying to sell that thing on eBay, because holy smokes, getting some good clean pictures of that, ugh. Nightmare. Joe then goes on to redeem himself with Sleeping Gods, the Ryan Laukat joint with Red Raven Games, and yeah, I got no disagreement here. This is one of those illustrations that immediately makes you go, wow, I gotta check out this game. The whole package, the design, the superimposed textured lettering on the front. It's not embossed. It's the opposite of embossed. Raised? I don't know. Again, I should really know these things. But the reflection on the brilliant gold up against the wonderfully lush illustration and the monster coming up underneath the steamboat, it tells you about a period in time. It invites you to join into this mystery. It makes it sound lush and adventurous, but also dangerous and unknown. And the really evocative title just kind of seals the deal. This is exactly what I want cover art on a board game to be. JCL nominates Antiquity, the first edition specifically, which again, this kind of brings back to that sort of game box as another thing kind of aesthetic. And I think this does it really well here too. And it doesn't try to change up the texture of the box. It's not cardboard deceiving itself as, you know, like crinkled paper packaging material. And in some ways, it looks a lot cleaner. I love the stamps on this, and the vibrant blue that is so plain just makes it look so bureaucratic, which I think really adds to the aesthetic here. Thing 12 Games has their own game nominated. They may be biased, but they think the Seals of Cthulhu has aged exceptionally well. And yeah, this is another one of those in a completely different aesthetic. So we have, again, a box that is pretending to be like a tome, a book that has a chain wrapped on it. Here, I think it does a pretty good job. I honestly could have done without the chain. I know it's, you know, underscoring the seals whole shtick, and it's really trying to emphasize that this is like forbidden knowledge here. But I think that the illustration would be served better with just the box. The gray and the emerald green are so lovely. That's not even emerald green, that's like bottle green. It's such a wonderful color, and the ashen gray with it is just incredible. And the minimalistic design for Cthulhu surrounding the lettering there is tremendous. So this is an instance where I would say that adding that extra layer of the chains just kind of detracts from what I think could have been an even better box art. Vak says Scythe. I mean, look at it. And yeah, I mean, that's the same thing that Jamie Stegmaier did, right? You know, that's the old story with Scythe, is that Jamie Stegmaier saw the Kotaku post featuring the artwork, and the illustrator that had come up with this world had, you know, all these wonderful illustrations, and Jamie Stegmaier, coming fresh off of Viticulture, was like, dude, I want to make a game in this world, contacted the illustrator and was like, let's do this thing together, and boom, Scythe was born, which to date still is one of the most singular games out there. There's nothing really replicating the art style of Scythe, where it looks like this old world Europe landscapes with these tremendous steam-powered mechs lumbering in the distance that feels cold and oppressive and militaristic. The sort of gestalt nature of juxtaposing these seemingly dissimilar elements into this one unified form is really brilliant. Eric has Dinosaur Island, totally liquid, and yeah, you know, you can rely on Kwanchai Moria to just kind of lean into a thing. And I don't know, like sometimes these like hyper colors of the 90s are just a little too piercing and they could get a little garish. But that's certainly what they were going for, and they leaned in heavy. I wouldn't rate this as one of my favorite illustrations of all time, but it does make a really vibrant box on the table. I do think that it's interesting that this is kind of like an imagined and exaggerated version of the 90s. As someone who grew up in the 90s, I remember what some of the illustrations and artworks and clothing and all that kind of stuff was. And this isn't necessarily it, but this is kind of like the retrospected, hyper-colored imagination of current generation's depictions of the 90s, which is a little bastardized and a little weird, but it is striking, to say the least. Never Say Die has Rad Lands, and you know what? I cannot debate. Rad Lands, I think, is similar to Dinosaur Island, totally liquid, in that it has this kind of like hyper color, these brilliant neon pinks and these really, really vibrant sky blues. You know, what I think of when I think of, honestly, like the classic 90s X-Men with Scott Summers with the pink blasters and then the blue and the yellow and all that kind of stuff. But it's more contained and juxtaposed against the white background, and having the black silhouette with just the edges around this character in those pinks and blues, I think make it much more interesting, and especially those striking white goggles. Rad Lands is a game that makes you want to play it and makes you want to learn more about the world just from the illustration on the box alone. Alex von den Spielrebellen says, I really like the comic style of Imperium, and Everdell is not only the cover, but all cards of high quality. And yeah, I mean, Imperium is incredible, and it has such lush and exaggerated caricatures, and taking those historical figures and really kind of bending them into this aesthetic that goes beyond what the illustrator has done even for like the West Kingdom series beforehand, and of course the lovely Westerosi illustrations that the artist did way back in the day, which now are famously used by Preston Jacobs all over his theory videos. It really is striking. The illustrations, I think, work better for the game itself than it is as a box art. The kind of like rows of characters or columns of characters doesn't really do it for me, but I do like that they've maintained that, even if it's not my favorite presentation, but maintaining that in the initial 2 releases, and now the following releases having that exact same columned approach is pretty cool, and so I've grown more fond of it over time. And Everdell, well, I mean, yeah, it's pretty good. Bones Jackson has, I love the Nazaro's work on Life Siphon and Dragoon. And yeah, if you want to have some illustrations that look like they are born out of the Cold War but are about fantasy, you cannot go better than these. These are illustrations that honestly are better than the games themselves. I want these games to be as good as the illustrations on the front promise them. Not that they're horrible games, but dang, those are some good illustrations. Life Siphon is easily something that I would want as a poster on my wall. Filippo says, say what you want, I still like it, with Hansa Teutonica. And you know what? I will say what I want. It's terrible. This is everything that you could say bad about a dry old Euro game that is daring someone to have fun with the box. As someone who likes dry old Euro games, I am so glad that we have gotten farther away from this. Not to say that having characters on the box is inherently bad, but something about the posturing, the colors, the look of the character directly at the camera. Just look at something like Marco Polo 2 if you want an alternative for, you know, this kind of style and an old school Euro style game, but with something that I find much more fresh. F3 Handlebar has Cosmic Frog, which I get it. It's just, I mean, it's a blacklight poster that is a board game, and then some. It has that psychedelia. It has that immense cosmic feel about it. It does feel like if Jack Kirby dropped a bunch of acid and then was like, frogs! I do like all that. I find it endearing, but it's also garish. Arcana Prophetia has Iwari, which I think Iwari, even though it doesn't have that minimalistic approach that we saw earlier, does a better job with the sort of minimalistic, evocative artwork that I think Namiji attempted to do. It certainly is more encompassing, and so is doing a different approach to this whole thing, but as far as having this inviting world and utilizing some of the same colors and this kind of like decaying or crumbling landscape and making you wonder about like what's inside, I think it succeeds more on inviting you in. Sean Franco has Android. I've always loved how clean and cinematic the color of Android is. This picture doesn't do credit to the reflective textures. And you know what? I disagree, kind of knowing more about Android and, you know, that subtitle, The World Changed, Crime Did Not. Android is going for that sort of Blade Runner, tech noir whole shtick, and this to me doesn't scream crime or tech noir or even cyberpunk. To me, the landscape looks like this is, you know, a climactic battle after an invading army came in maybe that far future, but it doesn't really get that hard-boiled aesthetic down. But the illustration itself is pretty nice, and that certainly is a world I'd like to see Fantasy Flight go back to. Aki Ikonin says, TI4 cover is the only board game art I've ever framed on my wall, which, good. I'm glad for you. I do like the illustrations. As far as it goes, my favorite Space Lions are always going to be the Thundercats, but more power to you. The sort of Starship Troopers dude in power armor at the bottom has always seemed kind of a little bogus to me, and there is something a little crisp, like overly crisp CG kind of looking about the lion at the front, but I really like the textures on the robe that's laying over him. So it is iconic, and it is so vivid, and it's great seeing kind of the iterations of this portrayal over time as TI4 has developed. So yeah, I'll give it to you. That's a good one. That's a good one. I like it. The lighter has Fog of Love, and yeah, again, we're seeing a string of games where it's a white background and then something really vivid and kind of abstract up against it. And I think Fog of Love, especially as a board game, something about the pink, the blue, the all caps title there in the gray, makes it really vivid and kind of mysterious. And part of that may be because we don't have a saturation of these types of themes in gaming. So if it's arrayed amongst all these boxes out there, it is one that's going to really invite you in. Big fan. El Norte has Fire in the Sky, the Great Pacific War, 1941 to 1945. My grandpa was a pilot in World War II. He was stationed in Italy, fought towards the end of the war, flew many missions. He's a P-47 pilot. Yeah, I'm all about it. I think I would have liked something that was a little bit less photorealistic. I don't know if this is a photo or if this is an illustration here. That's kind of an aesthetic thing. I would have liked something a little bit more stylized, but also not necessarily caricatures, even if the game itself had photographs in it. But nonetheless, I think this captures the desperation and the incredible feat of fighting in these dogfights in war. And Cigarette says Leaving Earth, a tabletop game of conquest in space, which is a game I love the artwork for. I mean, just look at that illustration. It feels abstract, but then you can detect what each of the things on it represent at a distance. It's vivid. Having the sky go from the a little bit lighter blue to the inky blackness at the top, the eclipse against the moon, the weird shape of the rocket itself. There's so much to love about this. The reds against the blues and the yellow text on the 1956 to 1976. Even if this weren't a game, this is a illustration that feels like it would be an awesome poster to frame on the wall. And same goes for Squeaky Beaky's Mind Management. I mean, this is just a movie poster, a golden era of Hollywood movie poster that needs to be made. I mean, you could just slap on like a Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall and The Big Sleep, Mind Management here. I mean, you could tell me this was a Raymond Chandler novel and I would believe you. I mean, it just, this is the sort of hard-boiled and sexy and evocative and interesting and inviting and dangerous and gritty world that I wanted Android to be. I mean, if this person had like a robotic eye, like a prosthetic eye or something else going on, then this would be perfect for Android. Maybe slap some blues and some neons on there. You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, Mind Management, mwah. Perfect. And then we're going to leave it with Van Kazi's Dungeon Degenerates Hand of Doom, which it certainly is unlike anything else out there. If I was saying Cosmic Frog was a blacklight poster, I mean, this thing, when you open Dungeon Degenerates, is just There is nothing like the contents of that box, and the box itself does an excellent job of promising exactly what is inside of that box. But yeah, I'm a record guy. I'm a subversive illustrations guy. It just is not something that I would sign off on. Hey, that's what makes us all different, and that's going to be it for today's Let's Debate on box artwork. And we could do this for a million different subjects or keep on going. I got so many more replies here. This was just the beginning. If you want to see more of this, then let us know in the comments below. If you like these, if you think they're fun, if you have some topics of your own you'd like to suggest that we throw out on Twitter and gather a bunch of information and debate about it, I want to know about it. But as always, thanks for supporting, thanks for listening, thanks for taking this lightly and not taking it as a personal attack, and thanks for watching. You know me, I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald.